your journey into youth work and civil society and democratization in Ukraine and the Eastern Europe. How did it all started?
Oh, well, I can say that my work with young people started when I was young myself. So I started being a very active volunteer in an organization when I joined university. So I honestly don't remember exactly when, but I just joined an event because I saw a poster when I was in university, and then it was interesting, and then I came another time, and then I got to know the people in this organization. So this was in Denmark when I was studying my bachelor. And then I became very active in this organization, and it's an organization that works with bringing young people together across Europe. That's one of the things that they do. I joined some international seminars, and I remember going to Moldova the first time. That was one of the first times I went to a country in like the eastern part of Europe. And I was just like, why did nobody tell me about this? Like I met a lot of young people, and they were all like me. And I had this picture that they would be very different, because I grew up in Western Europe where we had this story about like, Eastern Europe, it's something different, and it's far away and nobody knows anything actually. Um, so there was this image like from the Cold War, the kind of American controlled narrative that, the East Bloc was the bad guys. So I just grew up knowing very little about half of Europe. And I knew very much about the other half. And I was thinking, wow, this is crazy. I thought, wow, this is like, we know so little about, half of our continent. So I got very into this. And back then, this was my free time. So it was like when I was not studying, I was volunteering in this organization. We made a lot of international seminars. We planned, exchange trips and workshops and a lot of things. So that's kind of where it started. So I was just interested in like this kind of building bridges between people and breaking down some stereotypes because I realized that the stories that we heard about, people on the other side were not really true. And I was like, well, they're just like us, like there's, we don't need to have this image. And then I was involved in that. Then I got also later on involved in an online like volunteer driven magazine that also focused on Eastern Europe, but we wrote in Danish. So I was the editor in chief actually for quite some years. And we would also publish a lot of news about what would happen in Central and Eastern Europe in Danish, so people could read and follow. Also trying to kind of broaden the perspective on what Europe is. And then because of my interest in this part of Europe, then I applied for an internship in the Danish embassy in Kyiv when I was on my master's degree, and I got it. And then I had never been to Ukraine. I knew nothing. I remember I got it with a very short notice. And I just remember arriving here in the middle of January, and I had not even Googled how Kyiv looks. So I did not know what to expect, So I just came with my bags and I was like, okay, now I will live here for 6 months. I knew very little about Ukraine when I came, but it was so fascinating to me. There was so much going on always. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff going on, but it was a place where I was like, wow, there's so many things. There's so much energy in a way. Like, for good and for bad, there's a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of good things going on. And then I just got very interested in that. And then, of course, I took that with me when I was offered the job that I have now. And now I've had it for 5 years almost. So now I've been, diving a lot into Ukraine. But since you asked about like, this democratization thing, I think that's something I've always brought with me. I've always wanted to, make the world a better place. And then we can always discuss what does that mean, because there's many ways and people have very many different opinions on what a good place is. But I have also studied political science. I think for me, what is the best, situation for most people is when everybody have equal rights. I think that is my core motivation, is that I would like to contribute to the fact that people have equal rights. But that looks also, it's a complicated topic, right? So that is also the right to organize. It's the right to, and the responsibility to act, so that, helping regular people also, not only political, people in political positions, but also every one of us who are just like normal people. I've been quite lucky to have a job that can let me do that, so to speak.
When was the first time you came to Ukraine?
My first time in Ukraine was in January 2018.
There's kind of two of them, so how are you going to answer them? So first, what motivated you to become the director of the Ukrainian-Danish houses? And the whole that story, how that started, the first steps, the process, some challenges, yeah.
To be honest, I remember I saw that the job was announced back when they opened the project, and I did not apply the first time because I had another job that I liked. So I was thinking, it looks interesting, but I don't know if I'm ready to move to Ukraine. And so then I did not apply. But then actually they called me because they were really looking for someone who had experience being in Ukraine from before. And in 2021, well, this was in 2020 at the end, in the winter, there was not so many people with my profile who had actually been to Ukraine, because, now there's a lot of focus on Ukraine. Before, there was very little focus on Ukraine. At least in Denmark and in many Western countries, nobody paid attention, which is also one of the problems, as we know. So then they were like, would you like to come to an interview? And I was like, well, okay, I can do it, And then actually I ended up being offered the job. And that was, again, like I said before, one of my motivation is always to kind of if I can, then I feel very lucky to work with something that is somehow helping the democratic development in some way, and that can be very many different things. But this one was very, it's a very, how to say, constructive, a very positive mission, to help young people to keep doing what they're doing and keep working on their very important projects and their activism and their, organizations. So for me, I was like, okay, it's a beautiful mission. Of course, I would be very honored to help. I had a lot of thoughts on the relationship coming from another country and working inside, coming from Denmark and working in Ukraine. And I did not want it to be listen to the Danish people, you have to do like this and this, or that there is this unequal power relation. So I had a lot of thoughts about that. But then I was thinking, okay, I think if I come in with the right mindsets, I can do it in a way that seems okay. Yeah, I think. And then of course I was also motivated to go back to Ukraine because, as I said, I had the internship here and I really, really, really loved being in Ukraine. And then I was like, wow, if I have the chance to go back, that's fantastic. And then I was like, it's not a place that gets so much attention. This was back then, right? So from Denmark. So I was like, I can go there, I can do my work, nobody will bother me. And and I was like, I will stay for 2 years and then that's it, because that was how long this first the first project cycle was. And then of course the full-scale invasion started and it all got completely crazy. And now everybody's paying attention, and I've been here for almost 5 years, so things were of course not as I planned them, but well, that's okay.
How the process of opening the house in Kyiv and Mykolaev.
The Ukrainian Danish Youth House is it's like a development project. So it's actually not an organization. That's a technical thing. But that means that it's the Danish Cultural Institute and the Danish Youth Council. So it's two Danish organizations. They are like responsible for this project. And then I'm the one who's leading the project. So when I started, I actually, like, I literally got, on my first day, I got a pile of paper, like 100 pages of preparation, and like all the plans, the research that they had done, you know, like all, like the budget, everything. And then it was like, okay, now it's my responsibility to make it happen. So it has, of course, been a crazy ride, because when I started, there was nothing. We had no, like, I was the first full-time employee working only on the Ukrainian Danish Youth House. So I had to hire people, I had to find office, I had to find the house. And we started in Kyiv, right, in 2021. So we need to find a building, then it needed to be renovated. We need to develop all the programs, start doing activities. And then, of course, this was in the middle of COVID. So it was a bit complicated with the activities, you know, and bringing people together. And we tried to do some online things, and, you know, so it's been a quite long journey, of course. And then the full-scale invasion came in the middle of it. So we actually, like, we were supposed to get the keys for the building in Kyiv. I think on the day of the full-scale invasion was like the agreement, you know, that we had planned to hand over the key for the building, and then poof, and everybody was, you know, going in different places. I was already evacuated back then, because I had been sent out the week before by the embassy. And then, you know, like, I didn't know where my colleagues was, and it was completely crazy and full panic everywhere. I mean, you know it. And then we were like, oh, what are we gonna do, you know, with this project? But luckily, like, people kind of returned to Kyiv, of the colleagues who had then gone somewhere else, and we could continue, like, renovating the space, which took forever, because it was also in the middle of this kind of winter. The missile attack started, and we had no electricity. It took a really, like, a long time to get the physical building started in Kyiv, because of all the challenges around it. But at the same time, we did we had, of course, started doing our activities and our programs where we did not need the house, so we could kind of work on those and still do relevant things for young people. And one of our discussions back then was like, is this still relevant? You know, now there's a war. We did not expect it. At least I was not expecting that it would actually happen. Is that really, like, relevant to keep supporting youth organizations and youth activities right now? But I think we all kind of agreed quite quickly that it's even more important now, you know, because we need to keep people motivated. We need to keep the young people involved in whatever is happening. And we need to also make sure that, you know, young people are a part of shaping Ukraine, where they can live also in the future. So it's really, really important that we keep up this. So after 2 years, and after the full-scale invasion started, then Denmark announced this extra focus on Mykolayiv, as you also know. So the Danish government, the Danish Prime Minister, accepted the President Zelensky's suggestion that Denmark would focus on Mykolayiv for the recovery as well. And then that means, you know, that there was more money also going directly to Mykolayiv. So we could apply for money from the Danish government to make the youth house in Mykolayiv, because we were like, we already have a concept. We know how it works. We know that it does work, and it's easy for us to do it again just somewhere else. The hard thing was the first time in Kyiv. Now it's easy to do somewhere else. So then we applied, and we luckily got the money, and then we could start the same process in Mykolayiv, finding colleagues, finding a place to rent, renovating, making the programs. But it was much, much easier to do in Mykolayiv, because first of all, we already knew how this process would be, and also because Mykolaev is a smaller place than Kyiv, things are a bit more efficient. So it's been, so within 6 months in Mykolaev, we started doing activities, and within a year we had the house in Mykolaev, and now it's active and running. But that's been how the development has gone. So it's been a bit chaotic because of the circumstances and because of like the pandemic and the war, but so it's taken longer than we hoped, but I think I think we ended up in a good place. I was evacuated, like I think on a little bit more than 1 week before the full-scale invasion, so in February, middle of February 2022. And at the time I was like, I don't want to go. I was so angry, like I was like, let me go back, to my apartment and my work, but afterwards I was, of course, I'm grateful that I was not here when it started, because I think that would have been also very traumatizing. But it was also traumatizing to to observe it from abroad, because I was in Copenhagen when it started, and like it was absolutely horrible to be talking with my colleagues in full panic, and and everything, you just see it from the distance and you cannot do anything. It was absolutely horrible. But then for a while I was working online from Copenhagen, and we were always like, when can I start going back, and every time, and nobody kind of, in the beginning, it feels like so long ago, but in the beginning of the war, we were all like, but like we don't know what is happening, it's changing all the time, then it's a new, like the war is kind of changing also, so we don't know what they're doing. But luckily, after some time, I started traveling to Ukraine again, so I would be here like a week every month, more or less, for quite a long time. So I have like a lot of stamps in my passport. I've taken the train so many times. So I would be here like 1 week, and then 3 or 4 weeks in Denmark, and then 1 week in Ukraine. And I would also go to Mykolaev in between. But of course, in the beginning, people were like, in Denmark, were like, whoa, okay, that's crazy. You're going back into a war zone, aren't you afraid? Of course, the first time I went, I was not afraid, but I like hypersensitive, very, very focused, because I was always like, what is happening, always looking and always listening, because I needed to understand how it was to be in Ukraine during the war. So I had tried it, like I was like, oh, okay, I understand now what to do if something is happening, if there is an alarm or there is an attack, I know what to do. I've of course like also had some, before I went to take some like security courses on what to do and first aid training. But of course, like my family, for instance, they think I'm a bit crazy, to be honest. So I also like I made a deal that I always write my parents every morning that I'm okay. I think many people who are not in Ukraine, they don't see like what war looks like in reality, like because of course you have the front line, but I like you and me, we can sit here and we can talk and it's okay, and there is also like some normal life in between, which is, it's the crazy thing, like, but I think it's very hard to understand if you have not been in that situation. At the beginning I was trying to tell people, but listen, I'm just going to work like normal in the office. I can go and do my activities and I can meet people in my free time or in the weekends, or I can take walks or go to a cafe, and I think for many people who have not been here, they find it hard to understand, because I think they have this picture that everything is destroyed, or everything is war, and you probably heard it too if you talk with people from abroad, right? That I'm like, of course, this is one part of it. And for instance, last night, it's absolutely horrible that people get killed while they sleep, in a air attack. So that's horrible. But then today, I'm still going to meet my friends afterwards, and like, of course, we're thinking about this, but there is this weird, double life here. And I think that's very, very hard. If you never visited Ukraine during the war, for people who don't live here.
You came first in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And in comparing your experience like now, what was your first impression of Ukraine? As you said, you had a lot of like stereotypes about the eastern part. What was things that surprised you, or I don't know, maybe you liked? What you like about Ukraine, or what you don't like? Of course, the war.
I think everything surprised me at the time because I like, as I said, I didn't know much about Ukraine when I came, so I was like, whoa, about everything. I think my favorite part was this, it is still the contrast that you find in Ukraine. There is so much like mix of history, for instance, where you can walk down the street and on one side you can have like a beautiful Baroque building that in beautiful colors, and on the other side you have this massive communist, building. And for me, it's very interesting, right? It's like a clash of styles, a clash of historical periods, a mix between like the old, like very old history, and then also like very modern. When I came in 2018, I remember I had never seen a QR code in my life. So I remember going and you went to a restaurant and you're like, what is this? Do you have to scan a QR code to get a menu? And there you can see like Ukraine is very digital. And at the same time, this very, very old country, old history, old traditions. So kind of creates like some tension, and I like that, like some energy kind of, because you have like these opposing things going on. So it's also like I also remember the feeling that was back in 2018, but also very much actually during COVID and just when the pandemic was ending, in 2021, beginning of 2022, like that I was like, I know I'm in a country where the financial situation is one of the worst in Europe, it's one of the poorest countries in Europe. And at the same time, there's so much innovation going on. So people are poor, but they're still doing so many new things and creative ideas and making new small businesses and like always kind of changing. And that also is very interesting, because also to say, like, I come from Scandinavia, and that is right now, those countries are in a very like more stable situation for a long time, right? They used to be, of course, before they were also poor and they were, unstable, but now for the many years it's been very stable. So that also means that you don't have this like energy of innovation and things going on all the time. Also, I think that in Ukraine, to my experience, there is a very alive cultural life. Not only like the classic culture, like theaters and music and stuff, but not like I like also. I appreciate people have a very how to say. Most Ukrainians, they don't really expect anything from anyone, like you're not like expecting somebody will fix my problems, and I don't like that, because I would like for you to also have a state that could help you, for instance, more and stuff. But of course, that's my point of view. But I do like the mindset that comes out of it, because it's like I normally say, it's like a no bullshit mindset, that Ukrainians, they don't take no for an answer. If you want to do something and somebody's saying no, they're gonna do it anyway, and they're gonna just find their own solutions. They're like, that gives a lot of power to the individuals, and I think that's really healthy in a way. And it also, again, back to the democracy, I think is really good, because then you also see when things get politically too much, people also say no. So for instance, this summer with the anti-corruption demonstrations, I was like, aha, good, because you're gonna be like, no, I don't accept this, I'm gonna protest. So that's also why I kept saying since the beginning of the full-scale invasion that good luck to Russia trying to occupy Ukraine, because that's not gonna, even if you take it by force, it will be absolutely impossible to control Ukrainians. Which I think is very healthy, because you have your own kind of mind and your own like opinions on things. So that's really nice. Then what I don't like, lack of trust that I sometimes feel between maybe between the more like state or the public administration and the people. Like it's two different. I feel here it's like two different worlds. I think that's very sad because actually it should be together so that people feel it's your state, it's not someone else who's doing it. That's why it's hard to get to the corruption issues because it's so separated. And I don't also like the when the system is not very smart. I feel that there are many. I know this because I also work with, you know, sometimes with the registrations and the bureaucracy and all the paperwork. I feel that it is very complicated in Ukraine. And many things are more complicated that it's necessary. And I wish that there was like really, really big reforms on very many levels to make the system easier for people. So if you need something as a citizen, it's there, you know, you don't have to find the 10,000 different documents to prove one thing. Because I think if you make it easier, you also make it less interesting to cheat. Of course, just to say, I know it's like this in very many countries, and it's also not easy in Denmark, and it's not easy anywhere. But since I do see that this kind of the corruption, but in all senses, like both the people, the big, like the people who steal a lot of big money, but also like when it's hard to just use the system and follow the rules as a normal person. I think that's a very big problem because then it's also hard to make it better, you know, and I would like for it to be better and I would like for life to be easier for very many people, you know, and it could be if some of these things were just fixed.
What the gap it has to fill in Ukrainian, I don't know, society. Yeah.
Gap do we want to fill? I think in general, like the idea behind it is, of course, to have a meeting space that is neutral, so that you don't have to be in a certain political party to join, or you don't need to have money to join, you know, so that it's kind of available for everybody, because having a space is really, really important for different civil society movements and for democratic practice, because in the end, it is about people, you know? So for people to be feeling as a part of a group, it's important that we can meet. So we cannot all sit at home and do our own thing. We actually need to meet and talk with people. There are places like this in Ukraine already, thankfully. There's actually many places that have really cool places. It can be a youth center, it can be a culture center, a library. So there's many places that do have this, but where we have started it, we have considered that there wasn't like a free space where you did not need to be a member, where everybody is welcome. So that's kind of like what we want to contribute with, and especially in Mykolayiv, I also feel that it seems like there is a need because people are coming all the time, you know. So the fact that when you'll say like, okay, here is the place, you can come if you want, and then people are coming, then we know that there is a need, you know, because people come to socialize. I know that it's not in Mykolayiv, there's not so many places where young people just meet just to be together, but also there's not so many places to experiment, you know, do projects, maybe say I want to do a debate club, you know, or do what you want, and to have that space. So that's basically what we want to do, and I really hope that in the future there will be more places like this it doesn't have to be us who do it. It doesn't have to be a Ukrainian Danish youth house. I just think it's very important to have these spaces. So it can be in any format, and it can also be like outside in the summer if there's a nice park, you know, where people meet or anything. But it's just important that there is this environment that is inclusive and where people feel safe. So yeah.
By the way, do you have any plans of opening some other Danish youth house in Ukraine?
Not right now. So right now we're continuing with the two that we have, but I mean, like I could see that it could happen in the future. Of course, it's a nice concept, and now we know how to do it. So we could do it, but for now the plan is just to continue with the focus on Kyiv and Mykolayiv.
Mm-hmm. Reflecting on your experience, what is something you've come to realize about Ukrainians or about Ukraine itself that you think others should understand?
Yeah, I think maybe a little bit, like I said before, this mindset of like getting things done in a way and not sit and wait for help, I think is something that some of us in the northwestern part of Europe could maybe learn a bit from, to be like a bit more like independent somehow, like in your daily life, you know, that you know, you don't have to sit and wait for everything to you know, everyone else to do something for you. I think that is very nice. And I also think I've thought a lot about, like, people often ask me, like, you know, but how how to say, since the full scale invasion, they say like, oh, but I don't know how the Ukrainians do it, you know, how can they actually kind of continue every day in this horrible war, you know, like they don't understand how you know, you mentally you are strong enough. But then I say, but they have no choice, you know. And I think this, like, not giving up thing is also something that many could learn from, because I also feel like when if I imagine something like this happen in Denmark, I mean, I think honestly most of my friends would run away. Like when I ask and say, what would you do if there came a war here? And they're like, oh, I would run away to somewhere else, you know, like, and instead of like, you know, actually thinking, hey, what is important? And the fact that there are things that are worth fighting for, you know, and not give up and not run away. I think that is actually it's very nice, and it's important, because I also think we have to put some limits. You know, I am very much against violence in general. You know, I think violence and weapons and everything is a very bad thing, but there is a limit, you know. And when Russia is doing this, we have to say no, you know. And I think that's what you're doing, and that's very nice. You know, you also say no, like in the way you think, in the way you act. You know, this resilience is very impressive. So this is something that I for sure will always take with me. And then the innovation as well. I think Ukrainians are very good at finding good solutions, you know, on everything. Like if there's a problem, oh, we will find a way to find, you know, to deal with this. Sometimes maybe too much, but in general, I think that's something that is very nice, that I also like you know, take with me. And also the fact of being very good at things, like I feel maybe it's a result of that there is quite high competition in Ukraine. Like, you know, you all have to be good at what you're doing, but that also means that when, you know, people are so impressive, you know, like they do amazing things from they're very young, and they're very talented, and they're very good. And I'm always saying, like, even here, like when I'm walking in the street in Kyiv, and somebody's playing music, maybe in the metro, like, or in the underground, you know, they are like super talented, you know. And in Denmark, the people who play music in the street, they're horrible. It's because they have, you know, they just like, you know, do whatever. And here it's like even the street musicians are super talented. And of course, I'm sad that they have to play in the street. I would want them to play somewhere nice, but the level is just very high. So in general, I'm always like, oh, okay, if it's a Ukrainian, then for sure they're good at it, you know. So that's also something. Of course, I know it has a backside because not everybody can be good, and then all the people who are not the best, what happens with them? But in general, it's still very impressive, like this drive to be good at stuff.
Do you have something to say? Maybe what gives you a hope for the future of Ukraine and its young generations?
Yeah, I think I get hope from my like where I am and the people I talk to. So I would also say for you and for the young people in Ukraine, look at each other and see all the good things that everybody's doing and find hope in that. And find hope in that there are people who want good things to happen and they want a peaceful democratic society. They want a place where everybody's included. uh, these people are already there. So I think for me, the biggest hope is that when I see there's so many of them, everybody I meet from my work, in the Ukrainian Danish Youth House, everybody is absolutely fantastic, they're different and that's good. They do a lot of different things. That's also good. Some people do a lot, some people do not so much, and that's okay. Just the fact that there are so many people who actually are genuinely kind, they are good people. I mean, for me, then I'm like, then it will be okay because you guys are going to you're going to be the ones who also decide in the future. So I would also say don't be shy, to claim the power. Don't be shy to use your voice. It's very important. So if enough people from the young generation go out and like speak their voice, then we know there can be change. And again, like demonstrations this summer, the revolution of dignity, that was also young people who said, listen to us, we want to change. I know that it can be done, but then also just don't give up after the first push. Like keep working for it and keep insisting on what is the right thing to do and hold people accountable. So if your politicians they don't deliver, then elect someone new. If you don't have the right politician in power, then you run for politician.
Finish all that. Let's do a short blitz. You can give a short answer or a long if you want. So, if you had to choose, would you choose movies or books?
Books.
Do you have your favorite one? Or maybe once?
Right now, I think my favorite right now. I have like all-time favorites, but right now I think I very much like this Icelandic writer who writes very beautiful books. I don't know what it's called in English. I think it's called The Boy. It's a series of books, but it's a very beautiful philosophical book.
Do you watch movies just in general? Do you have your favorite or maybe your favorite Danish one?
Oh, do I have a favorite movie? That is hard. I don't watch so many movies these days, but there are some good Danish movies. Often they are very like dark. But there is this one with what is it called? I think it's called The Hunt, where it's with Mads Mikkelsen, that you maybe know, the Danish actor that is very famous. He he is. It's a horrible movie, actually. Like it's not horrible. It's very sad. It's about a man who's accused of being pedophile. Um, but it's a very powerful movie, at least. So that is the first one I remember right now.
If talking about that movie, I watched this. I love this. I have over my bed 1 meter poster of Mads Mikkelsen because I'm a huge fan of his,
Oh, there you go.
actually. So yeah, I'm kind of a little bit into Danish and Scandinavian stuff.
Oh, great.
Uh, are you a morning person or you are a night person?
Morning.
you know, in Copenhagen, in Denmark, I know that in Copenhagen you have a lot of bikes. Like, you prefer a car or a bike?
Bike always. I really miss biking. It's so efficient.
You know, in Ukraine, we don't usually ride them because you rather have to have those special roads, and we don't have
Yeah.
them. And if
Mhm.
you wanna go just, you know, ride between the cars, it's kind of, you know, I wouldn't do that because it's kind
No.
of too risky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you, if you listen to music, because you know there are some people who don't, I don't know what they do, but do you have some kind of music do you listen to, or maybe the artist you like?
Yes. So I listen less to music now than I used to, because now I listen a lot to podcasts and audiobooks in my free time. The older you get, the more you just listen to what you used to listen to when you were young. So I still listen to stuff that I used to listen to 15 years ago when I was like 20. One artist that I really like is this guy called Rodriguez, who is from a very beautiful movie. I can recommend the movie as well, which is called Searching for Sugar Man. He has amazing music that I really like.
Okay, I'm gonna watch it. So, thank you for that meeting. Tusen tack.
Hmm.
Yeah, wish you a great day and get well soon.